In the year of famine, the sister-in-law of the Shen family exchanged her last pancake for a skinny girl doll. Everyone thought that this family had gone crazy and would definitely end up in the future. Who would have thought that on the second day of adopting Haiyue, the sky began to fish, and crabs on the beach crawled onto their hands. Flower shells and razor clams exposed their breathing holes, waiting to be dug out. The life of the Shen family of 7 seemed to have turned upside down, transforming from a lack of food to a wealthy family holding various types of fish, meat, and seafood. Big brother. I'll cover up my sister. Second brother. I want to learn martial arts to protect my sister. Third brother. I want to earn money to spend on my sister. Fourth brother. I'll give my sister everything I eat. Later, the eldest brother became the first assistant, the second brother became the youngest young general, the third brother became the largest imperial merchant, and the fourth brother became the only descendant of the divine Dr. Valley. Haiyue transformed into the precious sister of all the big shots in the capital. Haiyue. Miss, please drive away. Chapter 1. The stepmother wants to kill her. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Southern Dynasties. In the 13th year of Jingyan, autumn. The wind and rain never stop, the weather is terrifyingly gloomy, with towering waves crashing against the coast, making huge noises. The entire sea is like a huge monster, constantly whimpering and roaring. Haiyue was dressed in rags and tattered clothes, shuttling along the country path. She held a dirty basket in her hand and knocked on the door from door to door. Give me something to stutter, please. Can you give me something to eat? Haiyue's lips are dry and cracked. It is now a barren year, and no one in the village is willing to pay attention to her. They have all turned her away from the door. She reached out and rubbed her hungry and painful stomach, but accidentally touched the new wound on her body that had just been beaten, causing her to grin in pain. If she can't get decent food back this time, she will be killed. However, she is likely to starve to death before being killed. She hasn't eaten anything serious for 3 days. These past 2 days, she has been eating grass roots and tree bark mixed with fish bones, which has made her throat ache even more. Haiyue was tired and hungry, and her thin body couldn't help but fall forward. Isn't this the little girl from the Zhang family, Haiyue? The neighboring household opened the door and saw the pitiful little one lying on the ground. Aunt Shen immediately moved forward with heartache and held little Haiyue in her arms. Haiyue's face turned red and she was heating up. Although she is not related to Haiyue, how can this child not be moved by such a tragic sight? Haiyue, wait for Auntie, Auntie will go get you something to eat. Aunt Shen gently picked up Haiyue from the ground and took her home. She also took out a cake from the leftover grain bag and stuffed it into Haiyue's hand. Upon smelling the fragrance of the cake, little Haiyue slowly opened her eyes. It's a cake, it smells so good, but she doesn't dare to eat it. My stepmother said that if she dares to secretly eat on her own, she will break her leg. Haiyue grabbed the cake and kept swallowing saliva. Aunt Shen was so heartbroken that she almost shed tears. At that moment, Aunt Zhang, who had not seen Haiyue come home for a long time, chased after her. She saw the cake in Haiyue's hand and grabbed it without hesitation. Then, she slapped her face and said, "You despicable hoof, you dare to secretly eat alone." Haiyue's cheeks instantly swelled up, and the corners of her lips also overflowed with bleeding. She shook her head cautiously and said, "I didn't." "No. If you're not thinking of stealing food, why don't you just take it home? You heartless beast, I have been raising you for 4 years, and you don't want to repay me. You always know how to eat and eat." Zhang Auntie pinched Haiyue's arm while eating the cake, causing her to curl up on the ground in pain, trembling uncontrollably. Shen Lanxin stepped forward and pushed Aunt Zhang away, saying, "She's still a child. If you have something to say, don't take action. I educate my child, is it none of your business?" Aunt Zhang rolled her eyes, swallowed the cake in a few bites, and greedily looked at Aunt Shen. Did you give this cake? If you really care about her, why don't you give her 2 more pieces? Aunt Zhang looked shameless, and Aunt Shen was so angry that she trembled all over. Seeing the 2 of them about to argue, Aunt Shen made a decisive decision and pulled Aunt Shen aside, driving Haiyue and Aunt Zhang out together. Let's go, my house doesn't have the food to give you autumn breeze. Cut. The stingy guy still learns to pretend to be a living bodhisattva. Aunt Zhang rolled her eyes and kicked Xiao Haiyue on the back. Hurry up and go to the next house. If you can't get any meat today, I'll chop off your hands and feed my family's treasure. Anyway, you're not my own little beast. Haiyue is a child picked up by the Zhang family from the sea. In Aunt Zhang's eyes, Haiyue, who is not her biological child, is the reserve food for their family of 3. If there is really no food to eat on that day, there is a possibility of killing her. Under the coercion of Aunt Zhang, Haiyue could only continue to beg door. The shoes on her feet were already rotten, and her small feet were stained with blood. She suddenly walked a path of blood. Until the latter half of the night, Haiyue knocked on all the doors of the village, and no one was willing to give her a bite to eat. Zhang Jinbao, the youngest son of the Zhang family, couldn't help but make a fuss and say, "Meat, I want to eat meat, I want to eat meat." Seeing Zhang Jinbao rolling and crying on the ground, Aunt Zhang felt heartbroken and gently comforted him, saying, "Jinbao, be good, Mom, go find some meat for you." After Zhang auntie finished speaking, her gaze fixed on little Haiyue in the corner. Seeing Aunt Zhang grab a kitchen knife and approach her, Haiyue was startled. With the strength she lifted from somewhere, Haiyue crawled and ran barefoot towards the outside of the house. "You despicable hoof dares to run." Aunt Zhang cursed and chased after her, pointing to Xiao Haiyue's back and cursing loudly. "Stop me now." Haiyue dare not stop. The sky turned dark, and the road in front of her was impossible to see clearly. Haiyue ran aimlessly, stepping on a sharp stone without paying attention, and her foot was instantly punctured with a blood hole, but she dared not stop. After all, she is only a 4.5-year-old child, unable to eat all day long, and her physical strength cannot compete with the chasing Mrs. Zhang behind her. She looked around in despair, at a loss. The next second, Haiyue's body collided into a warm embrace. Her thin and small body couldn't help but fall backwards. "Are you dying on the beach?" Mrs. Shen and Mr. Shen, who came out to find food in the middle of the night, caught a glimpse of a small figure running towards them. At first, the figure was too small, and Mr. Shen thought it was prey running out of the nearby forest, but he didn't expect it to be a child. Looking at little Haiyue, who was covered in blood and had a pale face in her arms, Aunt Shen felt extremely heartbroken and immediately hugged her into her arms. Behind Haiyue, Aunt Zhang finally climbed up from the sea. She focused on chasing after the person in front of her, but was unexpectedly swept into the sea by the waves at the beach. The wave was terrifying, as if it were alive, and it insisted on getting her involved. Aunt Zhang struggled inside for a long time, choking on several salty and fishy mouthfuls of seawater before barely crawling out of the vortex and saving her life. However, she also collided with the reef as a result, causing severe pain in half of her body and unable to lift her arms. "It's all because of that damn little beast. When I catch her, I'll definitely kill her." Aunt Zhang cursed and muttered. Seeing the little Haiyue in Mrs. Shen's arms, she immediately stepped forward in 3 steps and 2 steps, reaching out to pull the child in her arms. Aunt Zhang was drenched all over at the moment, with her hair wet and draped over her face. Coupled with her fierce expression, Aunt Shen was frightened and immediately screamed, "Ghost! I'm sorry. You're the ghost. Hurry up and return this little beast to me." Aunt Zhang spat in anger, her eyes filled with the child in Aunt Shen's arms. She caught a glimpse of the kitchen knife in Aunt Zhang's hand, and Aunt Shen stepped back on guard and exclaimed, "What are you doing? Are you trying to kill Haiyue?" Chapter 2. Fish falling from the sky. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. It's none of your business. This is my child. I raised her so much, so I'll handle her as I please. Zhang auntie said as she was about to start robbing someone. Shen stepped forward and stood in front of Zhang auntie. That's not what I said. If you eat your own child, won't you be afraid of being punished by heaven? Brother Shen gritted his teeth tightly. He was tall and stood in front of Aunt Zhang, standing one head higher than her, which frightened her and made her lose confidence. He retreated straight away. This is what I picked up, not my own child, said Mrs. Zhang, feeling angry. It's a barren year now. If we don't eat her, both my family's treasure and I will starve to death. With just her small physique, she probably won't be able to survive this month. If she turns into a corpse, I won't have to eat it. It's better to have it fresh now. Are you speaking human language? Mrs. Shen was so angry that her heart ached, and tears in her eyes couldn't stop falling. The child in her arms is as thin as a stick, like a kitten. Although she is 4 years old, she is not as heavy as her 2-year-old doll, which shows what kind of life she usually leads. Aren't you looking for something to eat? Mrs. Shen took out 6 salt cakes from her arms. These salt cakes are the food for the Shen family's future half-month. Here you are, Haiyue belongs to me from now on. That's it, who can eat enough? Aunt Zhang muttered maliciously, her eyes fixed on Mrs. Shen's arms. Mr. Shen made a decisive decision and stuffed the cake directly into Aunt Zhang's arms, threatening, don't be too embarrassed. Hurry up and take the cake and get out of here, otherwise you won't even have it in a while. Zhang Dazhi, the man of Aunt Zhang, is still at sea and has not returned. She cannot defeat 2 of them alone. Faced with the threat from Shen Lauda, she has no choice but to submit and carry a cake, pick up her tail, and leave. You, wait for me. Aunt Shen gently carried Haiyue home. She was originally afraid that the 4 children at home would not welcome her sister, but she didn't expect that she had just entered the door. A few children saw Haiyue, who was still sleeping in her arms, immediately approached her. Little Haiyue, who had just woken up, blinked. At first sight of so many people, she instinctively shrank into Mrs. Shen's arms, and the 4 of them pressed their heads against each other, encircling her and Haiyue tightly. Shen Lauda coughed helplessly and said, from now on, Haiyue will be your sister. As brothers, you all need to protect your sister, do you hear me? Okay. 4 people spoke in unison. Shen Sui, the 3rd-ranked one, excitedly grabbed the arm of Shen Pingyuan, the eldest-ranked one, and said, my sister is so cute, she's just too thin. Shoo, keep your voice down, my sister is scared by you. Second brother Shen Shila raised a finger to his lips and glared at him with a serious expression. After being scolded by his own second brother, Shen Sui pouted in dissatisfaction, and a runny nose popped out from his aggrieved nose. Upon seeing this scene, Haiyue couldn't help but blink her clear big eyes, and a hint of smile appeared on her lips. The 4th son of the Shen family, Shen Wuyo, who was the youngest before, saw Xiao Haiyue smile and was so happy that he seemed to have discovered a big treasure. Sister smiled so cute. Shen Wuyo couldn't help but reach out to touch Haiyue's head. Xiao Haiyue's head was small, and Shen Wuyo touched it carefully, afraid that her strength would hurt her. Feeling the kindness of the 4 children of the Shen family towards her, Haiyue also relaxed slightly from her previous guard. My mood relaxed and my stomach began to growl. Haiyue was so scared that she immediately covered her stomach. In the past, when she was at the Zhang family, whenever her stomach screamed, Aunt Zhang would get angry and beat her, complaining that she ate too much. Shen's sister Law reached out and pinched Haiyue's small nose, are you hungry? Mom will go cook for you. Upon hearing these words, Haiyue immediately became excited and shook her head at Aunt Shen, tears flashing in her eyes. No, don't eat Haiyue. Last time, Aunt Zhang said she wanted to take her to dinner, but in fact, she wanted to chop off her hand for her younger brother to eat. One younger brother needs to eat one hand, for older brothers need to eat 2 hands and 2 feet, and her hands and feet are not falling off. Haiyue's eyes were filled with tears, indicating obvious stress. Upon seeing this, Aunt Shen felt heartbroken beyond measure. With her mother's love overflowing, she gently embraced little Haiyue and comforted her in a low voice. "Haiyue is good, don't be afraid, Mom won't eat you." "I won't eat either. My sister is hungry, give her my portion as well." "Mine too. I want to feed my sister Chubby." The 4 children were chattering and making a fuss, all clamoring to give their share of the corn to Haiyue. Haiyue blinked her eyes, tears falling even more fiercely. "Sister doesn't cry." Shenhuio hurriedly took clothes to wipe Haiyue's tears. His clothes hadn't changed for a long time and were dirty. Instead, he wiped Haiyue's face into a little flower cat. "Haiyue doesn't mind either. Mother, father, pots and pans, good, good," she murmured in tears with unclear speech. Since she came to this world, she has never felt love and warmth. Now, she finally feels the seal inside her body instantly broken. Haiyue grinned, revealing her teeth but not her eyes. Haiyue is the sea spirit and the daughter of the sea god. She was born with the power of prayer from the fishermen at the seaside, able to transform the kindness of those around her and bring good luck to them. When she was born, Haiyue was picked up by the Zhang family and had a seal on her body. This seal could have been easily broken, but the Zhang family was unscrupulous and shameless, never showing any kindness to Haiyue. As a result, the seal on her body could not be lifted for a long time. The Zhang family also abused the gods, causing the fishermen in the entire Pearl Bay to be affected by it. The sea was stormy, and everyone complained loudly. Now, the seal on her body has been lifted, which can completely bless Mr. Shen and his family to safely pass through this disaster. "Haiyue, guarding you all." She spoke firmly. The child's emotions are the purest and most simple. As long as you treat her a little better, she will repay her thousands of times. Several members of the Shen family looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh, thinking it was just a child's nonsense. Comforting Haiyue, Mrs. Shen went to the kitchen to cook, Mr. Shen went to the backyard to chop firewood. The older Shen Pinyin was responsible for fetching water from the beach, Shen Shila and Shen Suisui in the middle were responsible for helping with the kitchen, and the youngest Shen Huio stayed inside to guard Haiyue. Shen Huio was the youngest, and it was time for him to fall asleep. He stood guard, his head tilted, and he fell asleep. Before the whole family noticed her, Haiyue tiptoed out of the door and arrived at the seaside. She clasped her hands together and prayed towards the beach. The seal on her body was only lifted, and her old injury had not yet healed. At this moment, she was still very reluctant to use her strength. A sweet and fishy smell rose from Haiyue's throat, but she herself enjoyed it. "Uncle Haishen, Haiyue wants fish, many, many fish." Shen family. Shen, who had cooked the husky corn with grass roots, had just returned from the kitchen when she saw that only Shen Huio, who was sleeping on all fours, was left in the room. Without seeing Xiao Haiyue, she was so angry that Shen stepped forward and hit Shen Huio on the head with an explosive chestnut, asking, "Where is Haiyue?" Shen Huio slept with a bewildered expression on his face. He looked back and forth in the room several times, but couldn't see Xiao Haiyue's figure. In an instant, he panicked and hurriedly said in place, "Where's my sister? She's gone." Fearing that the Zhang family would come to cause trouble and steal the child again, Mrs. Shen ignored everything else and greeted Shen Lauda, Shen Pinyin, Shen Shila, and Shen Suisui to go out and find them together. Haiyue. Haiyue. Mrs. Shen is extremely anxious, her mind is in a mess and everything is bouncing out. Finally, she saw little Haiyue on the beach. Under the moonlight, the little sea moon was like an elf on the sea, although still thin and small, its eyes were bright. More importantly, little Haiyue's side was actually fishing. Chapter 3. Haiyue is a little lucky star. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Several fish were bouncing at the feet of Haiyue, and there were still a few falling from the sky, each of them very big. It was pleasing to see them all. Seeing this scene, Mrs. Shen was so shocked that she opened her mouth wide and couldn't say a word. The next second, Mr. Shen was the first to react and greeted the three little guys next to him, "Hurry up and pick them up." "Oh." Three people spoke in unison and rushed towards the seafood. "Clip, clip my hand." "Oh, hello." "Quick, there's one more, don't run away." "Hurry up." The three children rolled into a ball, hurriedly taking clothes to their pockets. Xiao Haiyue's divine power is limited now. Although there is not much food, it is still enough for the Shen family to have several delicious meals. Shen Suesue's face was bitten by a fish, causing him to cry in pain. However, he couldn't close his mouth because he had food to eat, and the others also gained a lot. Three people cheered around Haiyue. "My sister is a lucky star, my sister is a lucky star." Shen's sister Law was also very excited as she watched this scene. She laughed with Shen beside her and said, "Haiyue, this child has some luck on him." Back in the day, when Aunt Zhang gave birth to Zhang Jinbao, she had difficulty giving birth due to an incorrect fetal position. After giving birth for 3 days and 3 nights, she couldn't give birth, and even adults and children couldn't be saved. The fishermen in Pearl Bay rely on the Sea of Hisense. Zhang Dazhi, the man of Aunt Zhang, killed the last chicken in his family for the sake of his child. He asked someone to bring the goddess back from Baichuan City, 100 miles away, and prayed all night by the sea. His sincerity moved the sea god. On Zhang Daji's way home, he found a baby named Haiyue. At that time, Haiyue was born with a pink carving and jade carving, with a small face that could be blown and shattered, making her a lucky and good child. It was precisely because of the arrival of Haiyue that Aunt Zhang succeeded in giving birth to a chubby and white son. Shen Laoda hugged his wife's shoulder and said firmly, "Even if she's not a lucky star, she's still our child and a good seedling of our Shen family." Mrs. Shen nodded with a smile. Afraid that so much food would make fellow villagers miss it, Mr. Shen and his family immediately rushed home with seafood after picking it up. In the room, Shen Wuyo was crying with her nose dripping out, and she sat there dumbfounded, twitching non-stop. "I lost my younger sister, I lost my younger sister." Seeing Shen Wuyo like this, Haiyue also began to blame herself, and Wei Chu Baba wanted to shed tears. "Sister." Shen Wuyo was so excited when she saw that Haiyue was fine. The next second, Shen Wuyo, who was half the size of Haiyue, hugged her. "Woo-woo, it's all because fourth brother is not good, it's all because of fourth brother." Haiyue was at a loss when he held her, and Shen Wuyo's strength was a bit strong. Although it hurt to hold her, Haiyue still smiled happily. Shen Suisui angrily said from behind, "Don't cry, fourth brother. I'll give you some meat later." Meat. Upon hearing eating meat, Shen Wuyo instantly stopped crying and started drooling from the corners of his mouth. "That's meat, I haven't eaten it for months." Seeing Shen Wuyo's greedy expression, several older brothers didn't hide their clothes. As soon as they spread out their pockets, a lively sea moon jumped out of Shen Pingyin's arms and entered Shen Wuyo's arms, causing him to panic. Then, he crouched down and fell to the ground. "Fish, it's fish." Shen Wuyo couldn't help but rub his eyes with his hand, feeling extremely excited. All right, keep your voice down, don't let anyone hear you." Mrs. Shen glared at Shen Wuyo and the whole family went to battle, starting to tidy up the fish they had picked up. Fortunately, the Shen family's location in the village is relatively remote, and coupled with being by the seaside, there is always a taste of seafood floating around. The 4 little ones, Pingyin, Shilu, Sui, and Wu Yu, were holding bowls and eagerly looking into the pot. Haiyue was protected by Shen Pingyin in her arms. The taste of stewed fish in the pot drifted out, and Haiyue couldn't help but take a sniff. In the past, the Zhang family would also cook fish, but the fish and meat were all owned by her younger brother Zhang Jinbao. She could only nag him to eat the remaining fish bones and taste the taste. After the fish was stewed, Mrs. Shen took chopsticks and pinned down a whole piece of fish belly. She shaved off the fish bones on top bit by bit, and handed the bowl filled with fish meat to Haiyue. Today, Haiyue is the great hero of the family, and this piece of fish meat belongs to Haiyue, she said. Haiyue looked at the bowl with some hesitation. When the Zhang family was still wealthy, Aunt Zhang would occasionally pretend to eat meat for her. As long as she showed a strong desire to eat, she would be considered lazy and would be kicked out to sleep in a dog house, picking pig manure. Seeing Haiyue not eating, Aunt Shen was not angry either. She scooped a spoonful of fish soup from the pot and mixed it with the fish meat in a bowl. After stirring it up and letting it cool, she handed the spoon to Haiyue's lips again and said, "Come on, don't be afraid, open your mouth." Zhang spoke with the sea moon probing. The delicious fish soup rolled down her throat into her stomach, incredibly tender and fragrant, so fragrant that Haiyue almost forgot to swallow it. She didn't expect that there was such delicious food in the world. Haiyue is good. In the future, if a mother takes a bite, you will take a bite. Shen's sister Law was filled with satisfaction. Outside, Shen saw, who was walking around, smelled the waves of fragrance emanating from the room and thought it was her own illusion. She was nimble and flipped through the broken back wall of Mrs. Shen's house. When she saw the fish in the pot, Mrs. Shen immediately cursed and said, "All right, you guys are eating alone." Chapter 4. Playing the Autumn Breeze. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. The Shen family has been a bunch of stinky kids since the generation of Shen Laoda. Including Shen Laoda, there are a total of 4 brothers. A few years ago, the 4 brothers had already split up. Shen Laoda and Shen Lao live closest, while the 3rd and 4th are both far away. When Shen saw the fish in the pot, her eyes were almost wide open, her mouth was sharp and harsh, and her hands were also very agile. She took a big fish head directly from the pot and looked at Shinda and Shinda saw with disdain, saying, "The good saw, this is not authentic. You don't even know how to take care of your own brothers and sisters if you have anything to eat." Shen saw said while eating the fish head in a daze. While eating, he couldn't stop scraping in the pot and said, "What about the fish body? The piece of meat on the fish belly is the largest." Her gaze at the pot was almost drawn. Seeing the bowl in Mrs. Shen's hand and the fish belly in that bowl, Mrs. Shen quickly grabbed the bowl and said, "This one is good, give it to me." She was about to eat when she saw the brothers Shen Pingyan and Shen Shila fighting together. She snatched the bowl back and held it in her arms, saying, "This is my sister's." Sister. Shen sister. Law, the second abbot monk, couldn't figure it out. Seeing the timid Haiyue in the crowd, Shen sister. Law immediately complained, "Big brother and sister. Law, why are the girls from the Zhang family in your house?" Sister Shen's mouth was filled with spittle and stars, fearing that it might scare the child. She immediately stood up and protected little Haiyue, saying, "Haiyue is my daughter, is there a problem?" Upon hearing these words, Shen saw hurriedly said, "Big brother and sister. Law, you are all confused. What's the use of a loser? Bringing it back to raise is also a waste of food. It's currently in a disaster, and this kind of dead girl is useless." Before Shen saw could finish speaking, a strong wind surged from the seaside and called out to her doorstep. Bang! Shen saw was startled and even dropped the bowl in her hand. She poured the freshly cooked fish soup on her hand, causing a huge blister that made her scream in pain. Shen saw looked at the restless sea with trembling eyes. "Look, even the sea god thinks she's a disaster star. I kindly advise you to send her back quickly. Don't regret it yourself then." Upon hearing these words, Mrs. Shen became unhappy and picked up a broom, ready to hit her. "I regret it, I regret your grandmother's leg. Did you eat the fish that my family Haiyue brought back?" Don't worry about my family's affairs, you must worry. Your family borrowed 30 taels of silver from me last year and haven't returned it yet. When are you planning to return it to us? Mrs. Shen raised her eyebrows and retorted without hesitation, like a hen ready to fight and protect her cubs at any time. Upon hearing about Mrs. Shen's request for money, she immediately became hesitant and muttered, Can't I stop talking? I'll just eat meat. She said, reaching out her chopsticks to grab something from the pot. Shen Saw has a big mouth. If she doesn't give him food now, she will definitely make a fuss that everyone in the village knows, and then everyone will not be able to eat it. Standing on this kind of sister-in-law, Mr. Shen and Mrs. Shen can only break their teeth and swallow it into their stomachs on a daily basis. Seeing Shen Saw's chopsticks eagerly reaching towards the largest piece of fish, Shen Lao, who had always been honest, was furious and struck Shen Saw's wrist with a chopstick. Ouch! Shen Saw's chopsticks in her hand were instantly released, and a big bulge appeared on her wrist. She covered her wrist and said without mercy, well. Everyone looks up and doesn't see each other. Even if we split up, we still belong as a family. Your younger brother only borrowed 30 taels of silver last year and held on to my family. Now, as an uncle, you bully my sister-in-law. Do you still have face? Shen's sister-in-law squatted on the ground, almost throwing and rolling. Shen Lao also couldn't stand her and said directly, This meat is for my daughter. I told you not to touch it, so don't touch it. Anyway, there's only so much to eat. If you're making noise now, we're not afraid. We can't eat it, and you can't eat it. If you want to be honest, Shen Lao stared coldly at her, understanding the pros and cons of the situation. Shen Saw had to shrink her neck in frustration, watching as Shen Lao Saw fed the best piece of meat on the fish to Haiyue. Haiyue nibbled on the fish and meat in the bowl, all her attention focused on it. Seeing Haiyue eating so happily, the Shen family was also extremely relieved. Shen Saw rubbed around the room for a while, but when she saw that Mr. Shen and others hadn't brought out anything else to eat, she reluctantly turned around and left. After dinner, it was time to go to bed. She was afraid that Haiyue might not be accustomed to sleeping, so Aunt Shen specifically asked her to sleep with her. The little Haiyue who went to bed for the first time had a surprised look in her eyes. She touched the soft bed and her beautiful big eyes blinked and blinked. Before, she used to sleep in a doghouse, but it was the first time she touched the bed. It turned out that the bed could be so soft. Come on, Mom will hold you and sleep. Aunt Shen opened her arms to show Haiyue. Haiyue carefully crawled into Mrs. Shen's arms. At first, her movements were very cramped, and she felt Haiyue's discomfort. Mrs. Shen gently patted her back, babbling and singing an unknown nursery rhyme to lull her to sleep. Smelling the scent on Mrs. Shen's body, this was the sweetest sleep Haiyue had ever had. There was no need to worry about being awakened by Aunt Zhang and Zhang Dazhi who suddenly went crazy in the middle of the night. The warmth in the bed made little Haiyue reluctant to let go and wished she could stay for 2 more incense sticks. She curled up under the blanket, and the next second, a wave of dampness emerged from under her little buttocks. In the middle of the night, Mrs. Shen was awakened by a rapidly spreading heat from her bed. She reached into the blanket and touched Haiyue's little buttocks. Seeing Haiyue sleeping soundly and with a heartless expression, Aunt Shen couldn't help but burst out laughing. The Shen family slept in a big bunk, while Shenhuo was sleeping next to Haiyue. Feeling the dampness, Shenhuo jumped out of bed and thought of the dish of stewed rattan sticks that Aunt Shen gave him when she wet the bed when she was a child. A person woke up, and the remaining children on the bed and Mr. Shen also woke up. The passive noise caused the culprit, who was sleeping soundly, to tremble and feel a chill in his buttocks. Shenhuo pointed at Haiyue's little buttocks and said, "Sister, she peed." Realizing that she had done something bad, Haiyue instinctively reached out to cover her eyes, wanting to cry, but also thought that her buttocks were still wet, and tried to cover them together. The result was either ignoring her head or her buttocks, causing her whole body to be flustered and her mouth to moan softly. Woo-woo. Hiccup, Haiyue said for a while, but didn't say a word. Instead, she let out a crying hiccup. Seeing her embarrassed appearance, the 6 members of the Shen family stared and chuckled. Mrs. Shen was the first to react and took a clean piece of clothing from the cabinet and draped it over Xiao Haiyue. She picked her up from the bed and went to the next room to change clothes. Seemingly remembering something, Shen Wuyo took 2 steps forward and mistakenly thought it was another stewed vine on his butt. He turned around and gestured to Sister Shen, "Mom, hit me, don't hit my sister." Chapter 5. Zhang Dazhi comes. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Seeing Shen Wuyo's actions, Aunt Shen smiled even happier and nodded in satisfaction. Not bad, not bad. My family knows that I need to protect my younger sister. Shen Wuyo stared blankly at Aunt Shen, finally realizing that he had misunderstood. He immediately scratched his head and let it go to the side. The 4 children of the Shen family deftly changed the bedding. In the side room, Aunt Shen reached out to untie Haiyue's clothes, only to find that Haiyue's body was covered in blue and purple wounds, pinched, drawn with bamboo sticks, and even stepped on with her feet. The wounds on top were crisscrossing, with new and old wounds stacked together, making it almost impossible to find a good piece of flesh. Mrs. Shen was shocked at the sight and couldn't help but take a deep breath of air. Her hand was in mid-air and there was no movement for a long time. Haiyue didn't know why, so she turned around to look at Aunt Shen. However, she saw that Aunt Shen had tears all over her face, which frightened Haiyue even more. She cried and said, "Haiyue was wrong, Haiyue dare not pee anymore." Mrs. Shen quickly shook her head and forced herself to say, "It's nothing to do with Haiyue. Haiyue is a good child, and she doesn't cry." Shen's sister Law carefully tidied up Haiyue's clothes, wiped her buttocks, and then found Shen Wuyo's clothes to put on for Haiyue. Taking Haiyue back to bed, Aunt Shen remained cautious all night, afraid that she might accidentally touch her. Having the experience of bedwetting in the first half of the night, Haiyue didn't sleep very soundly in the second half of the night, and woke up early the next morning. Fishermen living by the seaside have a habit of rushing to the sea, going once in the morning and once in the evening. The Shen family of 6 has already been well organized. Thinking of the meat he ate yesterday, Shen Suisui was very greedy and looked at Haiyue beside him. "Third brother, take you to the sea." "Okay," Haiyue agreed with a milky voice, walking with her short legs behind Shen Suisui's buttocks. Her height was only as high as Shen Suisui's waist, and despite running very fast, she still couldn't catch up with him and almost fell over. Upon seeing this, Shen Suisui bent down and carried Haiyue on his back. Mrs. Shen hesitated for a moment as she looked at the backs of the 2 children who were the first to set off, whether or not to let Xiao Haiyue go. If yesterday's fish rain was really related to Haiyue, then her visit this time will definitely bring rich profits to the Shen family. It's just that it's not midnight, but early morning. There are so many people on the beach, and if someone with a heart sees her, she is afraid that someone will harm Haiyue. A few children, however, didn't think about that and ran very fast one by one. After Shen Suisui arrived at the place, he directly dug with his bare hands and said, "Rushing to the sea is digging for what it is." Haiyue's little head tilted and she also dug along. On the beach, the crabs in the mud pit seemed to sense the sea spirit aura on Haiyue's body and crawled towards her direction. Before Haiyue could dig much, she saw 3 crabs as big as palms, competing to crawl into Haiyue's palm. Shen Suisui was shocked and almost shouted out, but he was covered by Shen Pingyun who had already understood the world behind him. Shen Suisui slammed Shen Pingyun's hand away with force, lowered his voice and excitedly pointed at the crab, saying, "Crab, what a fat crab." Understanding that this was once again a good thing brought by Haiyue, Aunt Shen was born and cooked twice. She quickly picked up the crab in a basket to avoid being seen by others. Today is the time for the fishing boat to return to the port, and Zhang Dazhi will also return. The port is very close to the location where the 7 members of the Shen family are rushing to sea. The fishing boat had just docked and had not stopped yet. Aunt Zhang couldn't wait to step forward and looked behind Zhang Dazhi. "So, have you caught the fish?" Zhang Dazhi was disheartened and spat at Xingzi. "His mother knew fish, and I almost died in the sea." Zhang Dazhi's fishing boat set sail along the same path as other fishing boats in the village. Along the way, while someone else's boat was sailing smoothly, Zhang Dazhi encountered a whirlpool on the sea, which seemed to have long eyes and only wandered around his boat. Zhang Dazhi's small broken boat was swaying and swaying in the vortex, with its sails broken and almost sinking into the sea. At this time of his life, the heavenly god was not yet beautiful. A thunderbolt struck directly at the bow of his boat. If he hadn't escaped in time and boarded another person's boat in the same village, he would have died long ago. I heard that Zhang Dazhi didn't catch any fish, and Aunt Zhang's face turned black. "There's no fish again, our family's food is almost depleted. How can you make me and Jinbao survive? Eat and eat, you know how to eat, and you don't care about my life or death." Zhang Dazhi's face was disheartened, and he was already suffocating. When he heard Aunt Zhang complain, he slapped her in the face with a slap. Aunt Zhang was knocked to the ground by a fan and stayed at the dock, crying and cursing, "Woo woo woo woo, why is my life so hard? It's not enough to manage it at home, and I have to endure this injustice. For years ago, I kindly adopted a child, but he was a white-eyed wolf and ran away with someone else's house. Damn the old Shen family, they robbed my child and refused to give anything. A group of bright and strong bandits." Aunt Zhang hammered her chest as she spoke. Zhang Dazhi just realized that his family's reserve grain is missing. "What about that dead girl? I was taken away by the Shen family." Aunt Zhang pointed towards the direction of the Shen family as she spoke. Upon hearing this, Zhang Dazhi angrily ran towards the direction of the Shen family. Seeing Zhang Dazhi coming over, Haiyue's face turned pale in fear. Memories of being beaten up in the past surged up, causing Haiyue's thin and small body to involuntarily retreat. The 4 little boys saw their sister crying and stepped forward, blocking her view with their own bodies. Zhang Dazhi reached out to grab someone, but was grabbed by Shen Laoda's arm and said, "What do you want from the Zhang family? This girl belongs to my family." Oh my goodness. Thinking of the crisscrossing injuries on Haiyue's body, Aunt Shen's resentment towards the Zhang family escalated to the extreme. "Haiyue is my daughter. When we brought Haiyue out of the Zhang family, we already gave her a cake." Chapter 6. Zhang's Plan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What cake? Who did you give it to? Who saw it? Aunt Zhang, who followed behind, didn't recognize it. That night, it was dark and there was no one around. As long as she bit her to death and didn't recognize her, who knew? Zhang Dazhi's face trembled with anger. "Did you hear me? Hurry up and return this girl to me, and then compensate me for the things in your basket. That's all for this matter. My younger sister belongs to my family. No one wants to steal my sister. Yes, whoever snatches my sister, I'll fight with them." Shen Wuyo tightly gripped his sister's hand, afraid of being taken away. The other 3 brothers spoke while tightly surrounding Haiyue. Haiyue's small face lifted, revealing the majestic figures of her brothers. She could no longer see the figures of those who made her have nightmares day and night, and the world seemed to be much more peaceful. Shen's sister Law noticed that Zhang Dazhi not only paid attention to Haiyue, but also targeted her basket, which was not feasible. These were all discovered by Haiyue, and she couldn't steal anything. She thought she hid the basket behind her. "Mrs. Zhang, I gave you the cake and you took it. You can't deny this. Haiyue has nothing to do with your family anymore. If you say it's okay, then it's okay. My family has been raising her for 4 years, how could it be okay?" Zhang Dazhi didn't even look at the surrounded Haiyue. This dead girl couldn't escape, but he had to get the basket first. This time going out to sea almost cost him his life, and he didn't catch anything. Although the stinky woman at home annoyed him, he was right. What does the whole family eat if they don't have anything to eat? Aunt Zhang had long been envious of that basket of crabs, but when Aunt Shen quickly hid, she accidentally saw them. The crabs were so big and fat that even thinking about them made her drool. Yes, quickly compensate us for the crabs, otherwise we'll report to the authorities and say you're robbing the children. You. Mrs. Shen was infuriated by the shamelessness of this family. Is Haiyue living a human life with them? Even a dog is not as good as it is. It's shameless to still want to use her Haiyue to make things wrong. Mrs. Shen turned her face in anger and moved behind Mr. Shen. She had nothing to say to such shameless people. Upon hearing that it was a crab, Zhang Daji's eyes lit up and he reached behind Mrs. Shen to grab it, only to be kicked out. Ah! Zhang Daji was already injured at sea, and this kick flew him more than 2 meters away, hitting the ground, and he didn't get up for a moment. Shen firmly stood in front of his wife and children, pointing his finger at Zhang Daji on the ground. I warned you about the Zhang family, and next time you dare to move, it won't be as simple as a single move. And you. Mr. Shen moved his arm to the left and pointed to Mrs. Zhang, you sold the child to my house with pancakes. Don't try to cheat, even if you're a woman, I'll beat you up. Get out. Hurry up and get out. Otherwise, I'll take action again. Zhang Daji crawled a few times but didn't get up. He didn't dare to vent his anger on Shen Laoda and angrily yelled at Zhang's sister. Law, damn you, you're blind. If you don't come over and pull me, you might as well raise a pig. Pigs are smarter than pigs. Can't you distinguish that child from a few pancakes? You're so stupid. No matter how thin a child is, they are still meat. How many pancakes can they compare to? Mrs. Zhang didn't dare to nibble, so she shrunk her neck and helped Zhang Daji up. Zhang Daji turned his head and glared fiercely at Haiyue. This girl is also an immature white-eyed wolf. She left someone else's house after a few cakes. If he had known this would have happened, he should have eaten her earlier. Shen Laoda noticed Zhang Daji's gaze and protected Haiyue behind him, looking at him coldly. You're not leaving yet, are you trying to force me to take action? Zhang Daji's expression paused and he angrily yelled at Aunt Zhang, let's go, why are you standing here foolishly? Do you think it's not embarrassing enough? Shen, the boss, saw that the person had left, so he took photos of several well-behaved kids and then picked up little Haiyue. Don't be afraid, Dad will protect you in the future. Protect Haiyue, protect my sister. A few boys followed and shouted, as if firmly guarding something important. Haiyue's eyes gradually moistened, her big eyes fixed on Shen Laoda, nodding heavily. In the future, she will also be a child protected by someone. There is no need to be afraid of the Zhang family anymore. Her parents and brothers are really kind to her, and she will repay them well. She will make the life at home better and better. Dad, Mom, brothers, let's continue to drive towards the sea. I saw many good things ahead before. Really, Mrs. Shen's eyes were surprised as she stared at Haiyue. This child is really a lucky star. How could their family adopt this child? Yes, I'll take you there. Haiyue's short legs thumped happily, and Shen Lao laughed and let her down. Haiyue led them forward based on her feelings and indeed found many good things, including sea fish, octopus, and oysters. Although the quantity was not large, they were large and fat. Haiyue is still young and weak, and she won't feel anything after a while, but the family has gained a lot, and she still smiles happily. Compared to the laughter and joy of the Shen family, the Zhang family has always been in a suppressed atmosphere. Zhang Daji was already restless because he didn't get anything, but when he returned, he found that he had lost all the meat he had been raising for several years. He glared at Aunt Zhang in anger and said, "What are you doing here? You're not cooking yet." "We don't have anything to eat at home," said Mrs. Zhang timidly. Otherwise, she wouldn't have sold Haiyue just because of a few cookies. This sentence immediately angered Zhang Dazhi, reminding him of Mrs. Zhang's foolish act of exchanging meat for pancakes. He raised his hand and slapped Mrs. Zhang in the face. "No matter what method you use, you'd better make me some food quickly. If you're hungry for me and my precious son, don't blame me for being impolite to you." Mrs. Zhang dared not speak out in anger and returned to the seaside with frustration, hoping to find something to eat. Otherwise, with Zhang Daji's personality, she would definitely not be spared. But Mrs. Zhang didn't stay at the beach for long, so she went home empty-handed. Zhang Daji's face turned black as he raised his hand and was about to hit her. "Stinky woman, you've taken my words for granted. You really owe me a lesson. You fight hard." Aunt Zhang was also very aggrieved. "I don't want to pick up some seafood to fill my stomach. But those seafood are like sick, all rushing towards Haiyue's girl. What can I do? Does that girl have this ability?" Zhang Daji's face showed suspicion. "Can I still lie to you?" Aunt Zhang was furious at the moment. "Even though that dead girl is a burden in our family, I didn't expect to come to Mr. Shen and everyone to have this ability. Do you think she did it intentionally?" Zhang Daji snorted coldly. "Why bother thinking? If that dead girl is really what you said, then she definitely did it on purpose. What should we do?" Mrs. Zhang felt like she had lost a treasure trove upon hearing this. With the attitude of Mr. Shen's family protecting the dead girl, they would never give her to us. The thought of Shen's family carrying things that originally belonged to them and starting to have no worries about food and clothing, Mrs. Zhang couldn't accept it at all. Zhang Daji said with a tiger on his face, "If they want to eat it all on their own, it depends on whether we agree or not. We've been raising that dead girl for so many years, and just a few pancakes are trying to get rid of us. What a beautiful idea." Mrs. Zhang's eyes lit up, and then her expression became somewhat hesitant. "Mr. Shen and the others will definitely not agree," she said. "What happened on the beach today has already shown Mr. Shen's attitude." Zhang Daji snorted again. "This can't be done by him. You're like this. The sky outside the window is clear for thousands of miles, but inside the cabin, there is an unprecedented cold and frost." Chapter 7. Youth with Amnesia. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The seaside. Today, Mr. Shen's family has gained a lot, so he is preparing to pack up and go home. Haiyue also took small steps towards Aunt Shen, when suddenly she saw a figure on the reef ahead. Haiyue hesitated for a moment before walking over. She's not doing well, but if she can help, she will definitely help. "Brother, go over there." Haiyue held Shen Wuyo's hand and walked towards the reef, with the remaining 3 brothers following suit. Shen's sister Law is not at ease with Haiyue and has been following behind. Later, it was discovered that a pale-faced young man was lying next to the reef. Haiyue pounced on the young man, feeling that he was still alive, but his breath of life was weak. If he were ignored, he would definitely die. "Mother," Haiyue pleaded as she looked at Sister Shen. Mrs. Shen rubbed Haiyue's head. Her family's Haiyue is really a good child, not only sensible and obedient, but also kind-hearted. "Wait." Mrs. Shen quickly ran towards Mr. Shen, explained the situation to him, and then Mr. Shen carried the boy back home. After Shen went back, she started boiling water. Shen took a bath for the young man, covered him with a blanket, and placed it on the big shop. Shen was busy with dinner. Xiao Haiyue couldn't help, so she stayed by the boy's side. The young man is about the same age as the older brother, but his skin is fair and tender, like today's oyster meat, and he looks very beautiful. She has never seen such a beautiful person in her life. Haiyue looked at the brothers not far away. Although the brothers were also very beautiful, this person seemed to look better. Haiyue, she prefers her brothers more. The brothers are the best, and the parents are also the best. They are really good to Haiyue. Thinking about it, Haiyue jumped down from the bunk with her short legs thumping, shouting for help from her mother. Dinner was cooked quickly, and today there were plump crabs with a fragrant aroma that drifted far away. The 4 young men of the Shen family tightly closed the door and kitchen door, and then began to eat a sumptuous dinner. The youth woke up in waves of fragrance. He sat up propped up and looked at the dilapidated but tidy room. His brow furrowed as he stumbled and was about to get out of bed. Haiyue heard the movement coming from the room and ran over happily. The boy looked up and saw a pair of bright big eyes. At this moment, the little girl with big eyes was looking at him in surprise. "You're awake. It's really great. Mom left you fish soup. Do you want to drink it now? Did you save me?" Haiyue nodded and shook her head. "I found you, but it was your parents who brought you back." The young man's wrinkled face dispersed like a gentle breeze. "Thank you for saving me." Haiyue was confused for a moment, but didn't pay much attention. She ran over and led the boy's hand towards the kitchen. The first time Haiyue didn't pull the boy stared blankly at Haiyue holding his hand, frowning slightly. He didn't like others moving him, but he didn't seem to reject the little girl. Haiyue pulled him to the kitchen, and Mrs. Shen smiled warmly and said, "Come and have some hot fish soup. You've been drinking water, and it's really good after drinking the fish soup." The young man stared at the fish soup handed over by Mrs. Shen and turned his face to one side in disgust. Haiyue watched as he refused to accept it and pulled him down to take the fish soup from Mrs. Shen's hand. "This fish soup is so fragrant, my mother specially left it for you. You can try it," she said. The boy hesitated as he looked at the fish soup, wondering where it was fragrant. There was a sea smell everywhere. How could these people eat it? He didn't answer, but the little girl kept holding it and hesitated for a few seconds before finally taking a sip. Then his eyes lit up instantly, and he drank pretty well. "Fragrant, my mother's craftsmanship is so good, it's cheaper for you." Shinshila's mouth was wrung as he inexplicably looked down on this stinky little boy. After finishing her meal, Mrs. Shen asked, "Do you still remember where your house is? I asked the head of the household to take you back." Mr. Shen replied, "Your family must be very worried if something happens to you. Don't worry, I will definitely send it back to you intact." After a moment of silence, the young man said, "I don't remember where my home is." As soon as the words came out, everyone in the room was confused. Shen Sui asked, "Then you should remember what your name is, right?" "I don't remember either." Mrs. Shen hesitated and asked, "So what do you remember?" The boy looked at her in confusion. Haiyue asked cautiously, "Big brother, do you remember nothing?" The boy nodded and Haiyue looked at him with pity. Big brother is so pitiful. Although she used to be pitiful, at least she still remembers who she is. Big brother doesn't remember anything anymore, and she will have no family in the future. "Mother, can we adopt our eldest brother?" Haiyue looked pitifully at Aunt Shen, who touched her head and said gently, "Haiyue, I'm sorry. If this young man only stays at their house for 2 days, they can accept it, but if it's adoption, they probably won't be able to do it. After all, their family is not doing well either." Adopting Haiyue is already gritting her teeth and she really doesn't have the ability to adopt a teenager. Moreover, by looking at the young man's clothes, it can be seen that his family is either wealthy, and he is probably raised by a servant. Their daily life of hunger is definitely not suitable for him. Mrs. Shen looked up at the young man and said, "You see, our lives are indeed quite difficult, and it seems that you are not very accustomed to our lives. So, adopting teenagers is not a good choice for both the teenagers themselves and their families." The young man nodded with a reserved expression of understanding, "I know." Upon seeing this, Mrs. Shen breathed a sigh of relief and smiled, "That's good. You're only waking up now. You can stay at my house for 2 days. After you recover, I'll have the head of the household take you to the town to help you find your family. Okay. After confirming his plans for the future, the young man went back to sleep. He was seriously injured and needed sleep to replenish his energy. After the young man left, Haiyue looked at Mrs. Shen with red eyes and choked up, asking, "Mother, did I cause trouble?" She knew that life at home was not good, and even though she was already a burden, she even let her parents adopt her eldest brother. Why is she so bad? Mrs. Shen painfully wiped away the tears from the corners of her eyes and whispered, "No. Haiyue is so well behaved, how could she cause trouble?" The four brothers on the side, seeing the situation, also began to hurriedly comfort Haiyue. "Sister, don't cry. My younger sister didn't cause any trouble, she's just kind-hearted." Yes. A beautiful person with a kind heart. With the comfort of Aunt Shen and the four brothers, Haiyue finally didn't feel so uncomfortable. It was at this moment that Aunt Shen asked her own doubts, "Haiyue, can you tell your mother why you want her to adopt that big brother?" Although they haven't been with Haiyue for long, they also have some understanding of this child. The other person is well behaved and sensible, never mentioning anything they can't do. Let them adopt this young man. Haiyue obviously seems a bit too impulsive. Haiyue's face furrowed and hesitated for a moment before saying, "Because there is a beautiful light next to Big Brother, there seems to be a voice telling me that keeping Big Brother by our side is beneficial for our parents and brothers." Mrs. Shen and the others looked at each other, not expecting it to be for such a reason. The head of the family, Mrs. Shen, looked at Mr. Shen, then we have just made a decision. Shen pondered for a moment before finally giving up the tempting proposal. Moreover, this young man's identity is too complex. If we want to enjoy wealth and prosperity, we also need to have that fate. Just like when we are fishing, if we want a daifengshu, salad of assorted fresh vegetables, we can only go to the deep sea far away, but we are more likely to encounter danger. Upon hearing these words, Mrs. Shen also paused for a moment. Although she wants great wealth and prosperity, she prefers a peaceful family. Chapter 8. Adoption of Che. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The next day. As Haiyue opened her hazy eyes, Aunt Shen beside her smiled gently and said, "Wake up. Get up quickly. Mom has made you fresh and delicious fish soup. Get up and drink it now." Haiyue nodded obediently, seeing that she was the only one drinking, and asked curiously, "Mother, where are your parents and brothers?" "Your father has gone out to sea, and Pingyuan and the others are talking in the yard." Haiyue's eyes lit up and she finished drinking the fish soup as quickly as possible before running to the yard to find her brothers. "Big brother, you're also awake." Haiyue arrived at the yard and saw the young man, his smiling eyes shining as if they were shining. The boy's gaze softened a lot when he saw Haiyue. Shenwuyo, who was standing beside him, felt very unhappy and felt that his sister was about to be taken away. He snorted and deliberately planned their conversation. "Sister, let's go to the sea." Haiyue nodded and looked up at the young man eagerly. "Big brother, do you want to go with us?" Because the Shen family lacks the ability to adopt young people, Haiyue hopes to create more memories before her elder brother leaves. The boy didn't originally plan to go, but looking at Haiyue's sparkling eyes, he seemed unable to say no. Shenwuyo sneered, "Sister, this guy can't carry his shoulders or carry his hands. Going there will only cause trouble for us." Shen Pingyuan tapped Shenwuyo's head with a black face and said, "Don't keep shouting at this guy, it's impolite." "But I don't know his name," Shenwuyo murmured in a low voice. Upon hearing this, Haiyue looked at the young man again and said, "Big brother, would you like to come up with a name so that everyone can call you more conveniently?" The young man touched the jade pendant in his hand. It was the jade pendant that Aunt Shen found while helping him wash and change his attire. It was engraved with a clear character. He is very familiar with this word, and if there are no mistakes, it should be his name. "Call me Che." "Well, Che." Haiyue happily held Che's hand, let's go to the sea together. Che nodded lightly and said, Shen Wuyo said, He really hates this guy who snatches his sister from him. The seaside. 6 people divided into 3 teams, and Haiyue took Che to the side to search for seafood. In no time, she found a sea cucumber. She enthusiastically boasted to Che, I have found a sea cucumber. Che hooked her lips and praised, great. Haiyue smiled brightly and walked forward with Che. Let's keep looking, look for a few more, and then we can give him to Dad to sell for money. Not far away, Zhang Dazhi saw all of this in his eyes. Yesterday, when Mrs. Zhang talked about Haiyue's abilities, he was still somewhat skeptical. But now, he firmly believes in these things. This dead girl, even though she has such skills, she has been living in his house for so many years, eating and drinking for nothing. The more Zhang Dazhi thought about it, the more uncomfortable he felt in his heart. He watched as Haiyue picked up one seafood after another, and the fruitful harvest made him particularly jealous. If he had those sea goods, he probably wouldn't have to go out to sea for many days. The more he thought about it, the more it happened. He walked over while Haiyue was pulling Che back. Haiyue had a deep-seated fear of Zhang Dazhi, and upon seeing him, her legs began to tremble, and this time was no exception. Seeing this, Che immediately protected Haiyue behind her and asked coldly, what are you doing? Zhang Dazhi ignored him, his eyes still fixed on Haiyue, and ordered, damn girl, give me the seafood you found. Haiyue tightly protected her little crab cage and trembled, no. This is for Dad to sell in town. Zhang Daji's hot temper suddenly erupted, you little heartless white-eyed wolf, I've been raising you for so long, and you're turning your elbow out. He walked forcefully to Haiyue's side, went to grab Haiyue's crab cage, and Che hurriedly went to protect Haiyue. Although subconsciously feeling that Zhang Daji in front of him was not his opponent, he was injured too severely and his moves couldn't keep up with consciousness. He could only briefly interfere with Zhang Daji and had no way of knocking him down. Zhang Daji was annoyed by Che's harassment and directly held the oar in his hand, greeting Che and Haiyue. Che protected Haiyue from injury and endured Zhang Daji's beating alone. Che. Haiyue looked at him with some confusion, collapsing and crying. The 4 brothers of the Shen family, who were not far away, also heard the sound. Just as they were about to rush over, suddenly the sky and earth changed color, and a huge wave rushed towards Zhang Daji, driving him far away. Zhang Daji stood up dizzy from the ground and walked towards Haiyue again. His crabs and sea cucumbers were still waiting for him, but as soon as he took 2 steps forward, the calm sea began to stir again. Zhang Daji cursed in a low voice. Although he really wanted to take the sea goods from Haiyue's hands, his own life was more important, and he could only reluctantly leave. Although the 4 brothers of the Shen family were also somewhat shocked by the scene before them, they were more worried about Haiyue and others. After the tide receded, they hurriedly rushed towards Haiyue's side. Brother, come and take a look at Che, he's unconscious again. Haiyue immediately asked for help when she saw the 4 brothers of the Shen family. The 4 brothers saw the situation and worked together to carry the young man home. Shen's sister Law looked up in surprise at Che's miserable situation and said, what's wrong with this? Haiyue choked up and told Aunt Shen about the matter. As soon as Shen, who had returned from the sea, entered the house, he heard Haiyue's crying. Without saying a word, he turned around and walked towards Zhang Daji's house. He went over and directly punched Zhang Daji twice, angrily saying, Zhang Daji, I tell you, if you let me know about bullying my daughter, I'll see you beat you up once. Zhang Daji was dazed by the beating and angrily said, when did I bully your daughter? Why don't you want to admit what happened at the beach today? As Shen Laoda's fist was about to come down, Zhang Daji roared, I'm hitting a strange stinky kid. Shen Laoda, are you going to beat your neighbor for an outsider now? The village on this side of Pearl Harbor is actually very exclusive. If there are any dirty things between the neighbors and the two of them make noise, the people around them won't say too much. However, if they fall out with the village's neighbors for the sake of an outsider, it will definitely offend public anger, and in severe cases, they may even be kicked out of the village. After hearing this, Boss Shen paused and then punched Zhang Dazhi twice in the face. What outsiders? That's my newly adopted son. Zhang Dazhi looked at him in amazement and said, "You're crazy. You adopted one and didn't have enough money to lose, yet you adopted another. What's it to do with you?" Shen Laoda clenched his fists again and said, "Remember for me, don't bully my son and daughter again in the future." Zhang Dazhi was worried about being beaten again and ultimately agreed in humiliation. After Mr. Shen returned from Zhang Dazhi's house, he saw Mrs. Shen standing at the door. After seeing him, Aunt Shen immediately rushed up and said, "Where did you go just now?" Mr. Shen didn't hide anything and told Mrs. Shen what had just happened, with a hint of apology in his eyes. "Sorry, I took it upon myself to adopt Che, he said. Mrs. Shen smiled and said, "It's okay. Actually, I also really want to adopt Che, but I have always had some concerns in my heart. Now that you speak up, I can also relax." Speaking of which, Aunt Shen continued to smile and comfort. "Moreover, Che Ren is quite good. If it weren't for him today, our little Haiyue would probably have suffered a lot." The two of them entered the room with a smile and told the news to Haiyue and the four brothers. Today, Che's protection of Haiyue has already been recognized by the four brothers, so they have no objections to Shen Laoda's proposal. Haiyue excitedly said, "Let me see if Che has woken up. I'll tell him the good news." Che had just woken up when Haiyue came in. When Haiyue told him the good news, he appeared calm and just opened his mouth to express his needs. "Boil water, I need to take a shower." He shook his arm in disgust, and he was almost annoyed by the sand that poured seawater onto him. Shen's sister Law also felt sorry for Che's injury just now. Upon hearing this, she said, "I'll go and cook it for you right away." "Wait a moment." "Okay, thank you. Cook a little more and make sure the water temperature is moderate." "How much more is burned?" "A pool is enough, I want to take a bath." Except for the teenagers, everyone present has petrified. Who needs a pool of water to take a shower? Having a bucket of hot water is considered good. Ah. Well. Mrs. Shen felt a bit embarrassed. Che, how about 2 buckets? There's really a lot of water in one pool, and we're all watering and washing. There's nothing like taking a bath, as you said. The young man frowned at the words and said, "Watering and washing. Can't we just search for it?" Mrs. Shen opened her mouth and asked where she was going. There was so much wood at home that she didn't even want to make an extra chair, so she couldn't afford to make anything luxurious like a bath. "You can't use a cooking pot, can you?" "That definitely won't work." The young man's expression was extremely disdainful. Mrs. Shen is very helpless, worthy of being a child from a wealthy family. She is simply a living ancestor. "Isn't it okay for Big Brother not to take a bath?" Haiyue asked with a pout. The young man remained silent as Haiyue took the boy's hand and walked inside. "Big Brother, this is our way of life. Why don't you make do with it? I'll wash it for you, okay? I washed it very well. I used to wash all the clothes of Jinbao." As she spoke, Haiyue turned her head and said mysteriously, "I also took Jinbao's bath, it was great. Can it be okay? If it makes Jinbao and Mrs. Zhang unhappy, she will be beaten." Haiyue has a cocoon on her hand. Although she has been raised well in the Shen family during this period, there is still a bit. She carefully watered the boy, who was originally unwilling and had an unpleasant expression. But gradually his complexion softened, and he didn't care. He just washed his arms, feeling as if it wasn't very important. Seeing Che listening to Haiyue, Aunt Shen breathed a sigh of relief. otherwise she wouldn't know what to do. Haiyue washes the young man's arms, Shen Laoda goes to move firewood, Shen's sister in law finishes her meal, and a few children from the Shen family help. The house is not as lively as before, but it is very warm. Because Haiyue needs to grow her body, her family has been eating seafood every day these days. Aunt Shen feels sorry for Haiyue's loss of health before. She looks at the small thing, even though it is a barren year, she still can't bear to part with things. When eating, everyone is quite tactful. The best and fattest ones are given to Haiyue, and even Che never fails to compete. Today, as soon as the family was preparing to eat, they heard the door being slammed loudly. I thought I was caught in the autumn breeze by Shen's sister in law before. During this time, they have been eating well and have locked doors everywhere. Shen Laoda stood up and asked loudly, "Who is that?" "Big brother, it's me, fourth brother." Upon hearing this, Mr. Shen's face changed. Haiyue remembered that when Shen's sister in law came last time, his father's face was not as ugly. Chapter 9. Debt Collector. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Mr. Shen gave his wife a wink, but Mrs. Shen didn't have time to collect the fish and seafood hanging on the kitchen beam and hid them inside the house. Everything that was still valuable was collected, and a few kids from the Shen family also helped. Shen Pingyan explained in a low voice to Haiyue and Che. My fourth uncle owes a lot of money outside. Every time he comes to borrow money. If he can't borrow money, he always has to take some things and leave. Before, our family didn't have much inventory, but now if he sees these things at home, even fish bones, he wants to exchange them for money. Big brother. Shen Laoda walked out calmly and said, "Here you are. It's so late, fourth, you have something to do." The mouth keeps moving, but the movements of the hands are slow and leisurely. Opening the door, there was a tall and thin man in his 20s, with a waxen complexion and a sluggish gait. "Oh, it smells so good. Big brother, you've had a good harvest lately." Mrs. Shen had packed up and returned to the kitchen. Upon hearing this, she awkwardly explained, "No, I finally picked up some fish and wanted to keep it, but there are many children at home who are growing and can only grit their teeth to cook. There is really no time to collect the fish in the pot." Shen Laosi smiled incredulously and sat down politely, using his older brother's bowl and chopsticks to directly pick up the fattest fish. Shen Shila saw that he had snatched the fish from Haiyue and was extremely anxious. Shen Laoda quickly said, "Fourth, give the fish to the child. Look at how thin the child is." Shen Laosi quickly held his bowl and dodged to the side. "Big brother, you're still not my brother. Didn't you see that I'm also thin? I haven't eaten such a fat fish for so many days." Mom said, "You all have to let me go." Mr. Shen's hand as he went to get the bowl heard Mr. Shen mention Mrs. Shen and slowly withdrew. Shen Laosi knew it was like this, with a proud smile. As long as he moved out of Mrs. Shen, Mr. Shen would definitely compromise and not be satisfied with 100 attempts. But when he was proudly bowing his head to ask for the plump and tender fish belly, he found that the fish in the bowl had disappeared without a trace. Looking at the fourth child of the Shen family in surprise, the Shen family was a child who had already turned red with suppressed laughter. Shen Laosi was furious and said, "Which of you stole my fish?" But he lowered his head and looked closely. The four boys, including Mrs. Shen, didn't have any fish in their bowls. "Did the fish fly?" "I didn't steal your fish. This fish was originally from Haiyue, I just helped her retrieve it." Moreover, Che said, glancing at Shen Laosi, "You almost ate it, it's really disgusting." After speaking, he vigorously rinsed the fish caught on the chopsticks in the bucket. These words almost made even Shen Laoda tense up, and the corners of his mouth pressed and pressed. Although he felt sorry for the bucket of water that had been stained by Che, he was still very happy in his heart. This kid is really amazing. Shen Laosi's face turned green with anger, and he was about to go up and cause trouble for Che Che. Shen Lao De quickly stood in front of him and said, "Is there something wrong with Lao Si coming to me so late?" Shen Lao Si was originally glaring fiercely at Che, but when he thought about the matter, he held back his breath and didn't care about the remaining fish in the pot. He put down his bowl and pulled Shen Lao De, saying, "Brother, I'm running out of money lately. Let's borrow $2 to spend." Mr. Shen knew it was this mess and asked with a worried face, "Did you go drinking again? Or did you go gambling?" "Brother, don't worry about so much. Can you lend me the usual money?" "How much?" Shen Lao Da's voice suddenly rose up, "Can you stop being whimsical every time and always having money? Why don't you just sell me?" Shen, the boss, was both worried and angry. "What's going on now? It's a bad year. It's good to have some food to eat. Where can I get you consistent money? Not to mention consistent money, it's just that you don't have a penny and don't even have food to eat to pay back." The more he said, the more angry Mr. Shen became. "I've told you so many times that I want you to marry a wife honestly. Big brother." Shen Laosi interrupted him with a bad expression on his face. "I don't want to lend him money, but every time I try to preach to him, it's been like this for so many years, it's really annoying." Shen Laosi immediately began to look at the scoundrel and said, "Those people who ask for money are urging me every day. Big brother, you must save me no matter what. My mother said you need to take at least $100, not even one less." The fourth son of the Shen family secretly touched the fish in the pot, while Haiyue ate the fish that Che had fed her and secretly hid the fish in her bowl under her clothes. A few people were busy, and as soon as Shen Laosi said these words, they all looked up at Shen Laosi. Haiyue has never seen someone so straightforward and resolute in asking for money, just as ferocious as Mrs. Zhang asking her for what she wants. Shen Laoda was angry and helpless, so he could only spread out and say, "There's really no money. Look at your nephews and nieces, none of whom have had enough to eat. How can you have any money? I don't believe it. I've heard that you recently adopted 2 children. If you don't have money, can you adopt 2 children? You must have hidden money before." Shen Laoda was very helpless. No matter how he explained it, Shen Laosi just didn't believe it. He couldn't help but remain silent. Shen Laosi looked at Shen Laoda silently and turned his head to look at Shen sister.in.law. Shen sister.in.law awkwardly asked, "Does Lao Si drink fish soup? If he doesn't drink it again, it will be gone." Shen Laosi looked and saw that there was only a little soup left at the bottom of a pot of fish. "Hurry up and finish all the drinks." After finishing, he looked at the 4 young boys from the Shen family and Haiyue Che. Che always felt like the young masters of those wealthy families in the town. He didn't dare to provoke them, so he glared at Haiyue. I really don't know if his big brother's family is crazy. Why are they raising such a loser after all these years of famine? As soon as he finished staring, he felt a chill all over and realized that it was the boy named Che who was squinting at him. He turned his head with a guilty expression. After dinner, he pestered Mr. Shen for money again, but he really didn't have any. There was only a small catch at home, so he had to worry about the children's food and definitely couldn't give it to Mr. Shen. Shen Laosi had been ink-stained for half a night and couldn't help but feel tired and cold, so he went back. Before returning, he even said, "Big brother, remember to raise money for me. I'll come back in a few days." Under his expectant gaze, Shen Laoda nodded helplessly, and Shen Laosi left satisfied. Shen Laosi left, and Haiyue clearly felt the family breathe a sigh of relief. Except for Che next to him, the older brother seemed to not care at all about others and did whatever was necessary. Haiyue took out a hidden bowl from under her clothes, inside which was a bowl of fish and meat. "Dad, it's a bit cold. Just heat it up and you can eat it," she said. Shen's heart melted instantly. Shen's sister.in.law and the children of the Shen family had long discovered that Haiyue was hiding fish and had been helping to cover up. Now, Shen's sister-in-law would boil the water again, and adding it to the bowl would make the fish steaming hot again. Mr. Shen happily ate the fish, feeling a little regretful as he just nodded. Chapter 10. Harvest. You are listening at novelfull.audio. There are 2 more mouths at home, and the Shen family always plans their days. Fortunately, Haiyue is lucky and can always see fish and shrimp when going out. The family has never been short of food. But Mr. Shen and Mrs. Shen are always very worried, and luck is hard to say. Who knows how long it can last? As a result, Shen Laoda went out to sea to fish many more times than usual. Haiyue prayed every time that Shen Laoda could return safely, and even begged the sea god uncle to let Pearl Bay go. There were people she cared about here, and the kindness of the Shen family has always warmed her. She really likes this place now. In just 2 days, the wind and waves at the seaside gradually stopped, and all the fishermen in Pearl Bay finally showed smiles on their faces, and the corners of Mrs. Shen's mouth did not come down. After the wind and waves stopped, everyone in Pearl Bay couldn't wait to go out to sea, hoping to harvest more. The Shen family is no exception. From Mrs. Shen to Haiyue, they all look forward to it. Although Che pretends not to care, she still often looks towards the direction of the beach with anticipation. Big brother Shen Pingyan and second brother Shen Sheila also went out to sea with their father. Haiyue, mother, and 3 brothers were at home preparing to sun-dry the winnows and other fish caught, and took them out to dry. Haiyue is young and her family is reluctant to let her work, but she is very sensible and always wants to help. That night, Mr. Shen returned and this time was just a try. He didn't go far. Mrs. Shen and her family didn't expect to catch too many fish, but when they followed the large army to the beach, they saw a lot of people gathered around their boat and ran over to find that Mr. Shen had caught a lot of fish, most of which were long arms. Where did brother Shen catch it? We're not together. Do you have a lot of fish? Yeah, let's take us next time. We didn't even play as much as you did. Shen Laoda smiled foolishly and kept busy. When he saw Mrs. Shen and the children waving, he quickly waved. Haiyue hugged a big fish that was fluttering, but the fish struggled and suddenly fell to the ground. She also tightly hugged the fish in her arms when she fell to the ground, and Shen Laoda couldn't stop laughing happily. Xiao Haiyue hugged it. Let her mother cook it for you tonight, she said. The people around them heard. Oh, brother Shen, you're so bold. You can't keep such a big fish for sale. It's a pity to be able to sell it at a higher price. It's such a pity to eat it. As soon as Haiyue heard that she wanted to sell money, she quickly picked up the fish and put it into the basket. Shen's sister-in-law stopped her and explained with a smile, "It's okay. My little Haiyue is still young, and she lost her health before. Now let's make up for it more. My child is always the most important." Upon hearing this, the elder brother gave a thumbs up to the Shen family and his wife. He knew that Haiyue was not his biological child, but the child he had raised in the Zhang family before. No one at the seaside knew that the Zhang family was not good for this child, but others had no choice. He couldn't even care about others. It's normal for him to starve to death this year. The Shen family caught a lot of fish this time, but the other families also gained some. They have been empty for so many days, and they are extremely happy with any harvest. The entire Pearl Bay is full of joy. This time, Mr. Shen caught more than 10 big fish. Except for the one held by Haiyue, Mr. Shen and Mrs. Shen discussed selling the remaining ones. Firstly, they bought some corn cobs. In case they couldn't catch the fish in the next 2 days, they also had some food reserves. The second is that the Shen couple plans to buy some cloth to make a new outfit for Haiyue. Haiyue used to wear the Zhang family's tattered, small and dirty clothes, but when she arrived at the Shen family, Mrs. Shen cleaned her up every day, and her clothes were all worn by Shen Wuyo. But ultimately, Shen Wuyo is a boy and his clothes don't fit well. Che can wear her original outfit, which has 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside. She can split it into 2 or 3 pieces and even wear clothes from the Shen family, but Haiyue doesn't have her own good clothes. These days, Mr. Shen and Mrs. Shen always feel guilty about owing this child. Since the 2 couples have decided to adopt her, she is their beloved and wants to give her the best. Haiyue, let's go to the market. Che carried the sea moon on her back, while Shenhuo competed on the side, but unfortunately, she was only slightly shorter than Che and walked at the end with a strong spirit. Haiyue has never been to the town before. In the past, Aunt Zhang often took Zhang Jinbao there. Every time Haiyue's eyes were eager to see her, Aunt Zhang would slap her and say that cheap things are just for good. Now she can finally go to the town, it's still a matter of going honestly. Lying on her clear back, Haiyue's excited face turned red, wishing she could have a few more pairs of eyes. Like it. I'll bring you here every day from now on. Che looked back at her and smiled, saying that he was fine every day anyway. The most leisurely thing in the Shen family is Che. He doesn't do anything and spends his days wandering around or flipping through Shen Ping En's 3-character scripture. Every time he flips through it, he feels extremely disgusted. Haiyue's eyes lit up as soon as she heard it, but she quickly shook her head and said, not every day. Che was a bit strange, but Haiyue's attention was immediately drawn to the sugar people in the town, who had walked a long way and were still staring. There is only one tavern in the town that is quite large, with 2 shops as large. Usually, these big fish are either delivered to the tavern or sent to the doorstep of wealthy people to ask if they want them. However, this time Mr. Shen has a dozen or so, only this tavern can buy them. Shen Laoda and the shopkeeper were bargaining, and Haiyue had nothing to do with her eyes. She looked around and saw someone in a corner from afar who looked very similar to Shen Laosi that day. She lowered her head and asked, Big brother, look at the one in the innermost corner, is it Uncle Shen? Che glanced at her and asked her to remain silent. Shen Laosi quickly discussed with the shopkeeper, and the young man from the Shen family helped to send the fish in. When they came out, they saw Shen Laoda counting the money. Everyone walked out of the tavern and Che leaned over to Shen Laoda. Uncle Shen, you just saw Uncle Shen at the tavern. You said he will know that you sold money today, right? After speaking, Che walked away, leaving behind Mr. Shen with a complex expression on his face. Mr. Shen bought a large piece of cloth for Haiyue, enough to make 2 sets of clothes. I also bought a cheap but beautifully carved wooden hairpin for Aunt Shen, and used the remaining money to buy candy figurines for my 4 children. I spent all the money on selling fish. The 4 young boys from the Shen family hesitated a bit, but they were all smart enough not to ask anything. They also guessed that it was because Che and Shen Laoda had said something. At night, when she returned home, Mrs. Shen found that she hadn't left a single penny and insisted on urging Mr. Shen to return the hairpin. It wasn't until Mr. Shen told her that she had seen Mr. C at the tavern. Scared, Aunt Shen cut the cloth into 2 clothes for Haiyue overnight, and after cutting them out, she slowly sewed them together. As a result, the family did not wait for Shen Laosi to arrive, but instead for Shen sister-in-law to arrive.